These fissures are really impressive, and a lot of times you can't get down in them. But we were in this region where it was just had recent volcanic activity within the past month, say, and there was a lot of earthquake activity, as much as 100 micro-earthquakes per day. I have no idea I'm not a geologist, I don't know what that means in terms of seafloor falling apart, but it sounded bad. And so we went into this fissure. I had 2 geologists in the sub with me, and we went in the fissure, and they were just ecstatic because it was a tremendous history of the volcanism. You could see the different layers of lava by the different color and different forms. And it was great. We just went right on in, and they said, keep going. And this is, we're talking about right where the plates spread apart. It's like a zipper, and you just go right up. You can get right to where, where the little, whatever the zipper things are called. And I could even see, I was a little too excited myself, because I could see where it was still together but cracking, but not motion, but you could see the gap. And we went right in there, and we had, I don't remember how high, maybe 30-meter high walls, maybe less. But anyway, we were definitely down in a fissure. It got narrow out the viewports either side, maybe a meter were the walls. And I remembered at that point that, gee, if there was an earthquake or if I hit the wrong rock, this could all come tumbling down on top of me, and all the safety redundancies that Alvin has will do you no good.
And what depth were you at then?
I don't remember. 2,600 meters at least. I don't know. It's probably deeper.
Mile and a half, 2 miles.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was scared, and I said, we're getting out of here, and we got out, and my hand was shaking, and I bet my passengers were scared because I was scared.
Well, sure. I would have been uneasy too.
Uneasy, that's the phrase, uneasy. It wasn't an immediate danger, but it was just, this is not a place the sub should be. The strangest thing I've ever seen in Alvin was a scientist dancing to rap music on the descent. Badly. Both the music and the dancing. Yeah.
I asked Ruth whether in all the hours of studying science, she ever found it boring.
It can be tedious sometimes, but it's never boring.
Even when you are counting 1,000 clamshells?
Yeah, that's tedious.
It's remarkable there's 1,000 to count.
Yeah, and you say, boy, look at this. Just think of all I can do with this many records. And then click away on your counter and sort them to size groups and so on and so forth. And the more you get, the happier you are. And I suppose when I look at a piece of wood that I'm dissecting and I find it's just full, chock-a-block full of animals, and I've got to dissect all of those out of the wood, you think, oh, wow, I'm not going to get that all done in one day. And that's hard work, but it's not boring work. But that doesn't say that there aren't some sort of gruesome tasks that go along, tedious tasks. Science is not all fun. And one's got to learn to put one foot ahead of the other and keep going, and to do the tedious things like cleaning up and all the rest of it that needs to be done. So there's a combination of both, but the exhilaration of doing research overcomes all of the tediousness that goes along with it.
I asked Ruth whether life was ever boring on Lulu.
On Lulu? Lulu itself was so exciting it couldn't be boring. And no. Well, there were times when, if the weather was bad and you couldn't dive and so on, that you brought enough work with you to read and write manuscripts and do that kind of thing. But no, It wasn't boring, and there were too many good people around. I mean, you had a chance to talk and review all kinds of things.
What'd you do in the evenings on Lulu?
Oh, on Lulu, we didn't have 5,000 tapes, the
Yeah.
way you do here. We might have 5 reels of film that were about this size, and so after dinner, they'd set up the movie projector, and you'd all see the same movie. But and you might look at it if you were out on a 10-day cruise. You might look at it a couple of times, but never mind. It was there, but you always had a lot of good company, and we played games, cribbage, poker, and that kind of thing, which they don't do so much today as we did then. We did a lot more in the early days of. I say early days when I was first on Lulu, and I guess that was reasonably early too.
Did you have a lot of good discussions?
Oh yeah, loads of them. And you get people on board like Howie Saunders and who had been in the field a lot longer than I had at that time, and all, and it was just great. It was sort of like being at the MCZ when I would go downstairs during smoking period, and this was about my only good thing I ever have to say about smoking. But we go down and smoke at outdoors. We couldn't smoke in the building at 10 o'clock in the morning, and maybe at lunchtime and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The rest of the day you couldn't smoke. But I remember one graduate student coming early on and being told, well, you can skip classes, you can skip other things sometimes, but whatever you do, don't skip the smoking session. This is a little exaggerated, of course, but you'll learn more from all of the people that will be there and discussing what they're doing and so on. And that was about the way I felt about lunch periods and smoking period and a lot of time. And just the privilege of being able to sit and talk with a lot of the visitors and all who came. It was a big eye-opener and things that you just never forgot.
I asked them to think back to their initial sources of inspiration for becoming a scientist and consider whether what it was that captured their interests was the animals that they studied, the instruments and technology, or the people they saw doing science.
It was people and animals. And I worked with some really neat people. When I was in high school, we got a chance to go to work in a lab, and there was a guy, Walt Canzonier, who was just my hero. And he certainly, I felt if biologists were like this is the sort of people I want to hang around.
I would definitely say it was the people.
Yeah.
It started really in 7th grade. I had a teacher that had us do a study, Mr. Frew, of a pond, and we went out and did pH and temperature and ecology type things. And then in college, it was Jim Porter and Karen Porter. But I would say, in my situation, enthusiasm was a big part of it. Whether it was the individual for their own research or the encompassing for undergraduates, and it varied from different people.
And how enthusiastic did people get?
Well, Jim Porter is extremely, he's extremely enthusiastic. Yeah. When I was doing my project on horseshoe crab mating behavior, and I was motivating 60 students to come out and help me count horseshoe crabs, Jim was right at the forefront out there counting, swearing up and down, this is why I do tropical research, when we're out in the sleet of Cape Cod in early May. He was both, he was out there in the field, but also in his lectures in class and in his enthusiasm for each individual's project. It was amazing. So he really encouraged your own thinking. I never knew I could do that.
Just having the opportunity to go on field trips with some of my people, I think, probably did more to encourage me along that, was to get out and work with them and get in the field and begin to see how collecting was done and what it meant and where the books were in the library and being a member of the lab. And I would guess that when it came down to being a real serious biologist, it was actually working in a lab at Harvard, and really being right from the very start, going through research from the start right through the finish. Even though I shouldn't have been an author on that paper, I was. And that meant a great deal. I mean, I was tagging along, I was doing the dirty work, and I really didn't know what I was doing sometimes, but oh boy.
Did you like the dirty work? Did you enjoy it?
Oh, I loved it. I loved every minute of just being able to be with them, to be in the same room. And that is, I think, a great deal. I remember saying to my professor once, what can I ever do to thank you for all that you've done for me? He said, you can't. Do it for the next generation. And that's what I've tried to do.
My colleague Ed Lydecker asked the next set of questions. He began by explaining how in his line of work, personnel, he occasionally witnessed difficulties for women in the workplace. He was curious whether those sorts of problems ever arose in science.
It's so much different today than it was when I started out.
In what
I mean,
ways?
well, women just didn't do certain things. I mean, I was a technician, and if I went down to the smoking session or went out and sat on the steps of the museum and talked with men, some people would say, what are you doing here? I was just considered a secretary, but that quickly went away when they realized that I was dead serious about what I was doing, and that I was doing good work, and I was publishing good work, and so on. So a lot of that very quickly, as far as I was concerned, disappeared, and I think for women in general, it's pretty much disappeared. It's a lot easier now than it was back in the 50s and the 40s. And so today, I just don't think about it. Well, in fact, people have often said to me, well, you know, what was it like being one of the very few women? I don't know. I was too busy doing my work to even think about it. And that's absolutely true. I was not aware. I never felt as though I was really being put down on because I was a woman. But I probably was fortunate that I was working with someone like the MCZ, and where there just was none of that.
Training to be a pilot was more intense than anything I've ever done.
You know, I bet.
What did you do during that year?
It was all self-motivated study, and you just learn the submarine inside and out. So you memorize schematics and you learn how systems work. But it was, I mean, for me, it was like starting at kindergarten. I mean, it didn't count at all that I had gone through school and was a technician and got a PhD. It just didn't count for anything. So I was going back to it.
So you had to learn the electronics and everything in the sub?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Top to bottom.
Yep.
You did that all at Woods Hole?
Out at sea. It was all in the field, learning on the ship. That was my 8 to 10 months at sea period, and it's all done on the job.
Did you ever wonder if you were going to make it through all of that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Dudley Foster asked me, what's the matter? Don't you have the right stuff? Oh, he doesn't remember saying that, but that stuck in my mind. So amazing. Is, you know, I mean, I remember sitting on the fantail of the ship at night one time, and something had happened, and you know, he was shaking his head, and we had this serious conversation. He said, I just don't know if you're going to have the right stuff. I was like, well, you know, what do you say?